Hello, my name is Paul, and welcome to B-Movie Dreamer. This is episode number 9. Welcome back. It's been a while, and I'll get to that in a minute. But for those of you who maybe are seeing this for the first time, what I do here is write scripts, build props, and try to shoot movies. We're complete amateurs. We have no formal education. We just love movies, we love TV, and we love the B movie in particular. And I've explained that in past episodes, all about what a B movie is and you know what goes into that. But mostly what goes into that is fun, and we always try to have that right here. We don't critique a lot of stuff. We try to leave the negative at home, so to speak. We're just in it for the fun, for the love of making movies. And so the movie we're working on right now is called Space Spider, as most of you know. And what makes this particular channel, program, show, whatever you'd like to call it, is that we're doing behind the scenes for this movie, but we're doing it while we make the movie, as opposed to doing it all after the movie. And that's usually what you see on a DVD or a Blu-ray bonus feature. So it's an interesting thing for us because it keeps us going, it keeps us pushing forward, knowing that we need to get things done. So complete amateurs, we don't get any money for this. I don't get any money for writing or directing. The actors don't get anything. It's just all for a good time. And this is our third film that we're going to be making. And since it's mostly me most of the time, it's going to take a long time. So anyway, I do have some notes. I have an awful lot to say. And what I'll say here is this. When I started the beginning of episode 8, yes, it was a long time between number 7 and number 8, and I explained the reason for that. Well, now it's been a long time between episodes 8 and 9, and I'll explain that quickly to you as well. Okay, so our small studio is at a different location now, and it's complete, the move is complete, and the setup is about 95% complete. So we're basically well on our way. Now, as I reminded you before, I'm doing this mostly by myself. I do get help from others. Shout out to Kurt, thank you, Kurt. And when the movie actually is ready to get filmed, then we do have many volunteers that will also help with not only the camera work, but of course the actors as well. So last episode I was able to tell you that the script is finished. However, with that, I do things the old-fashioned way. I'm very old school in most of the things that I do. I have pencil to paper when I write a script. So it is complete, but it is not typed up yet. And that's kind of important because the actors really they need to be able to read my writing. So we are in the middle of getting that typed up. So last segment, we did something different. We showed you the practical special effects from our first movie, The Depths of Destruction. And I thought that went quite well. We showed a lot of clips. We tried to explain some of how we actually came up with things, how we did things, especially when you have little to no money. And we are going to do the practical special effects and explain them for our second movie that we did, which was Die Snapper Die. But we're not going to do that on this particular episode. We might do it on episode number 10, but either way it will happen very soon. Most people in general and I'm no exception, have some health issues, and between those health issues and between the move and the setup, there hasn't really been a lot of time for filmmaking. But I still couldn't let that get away from me, so I was able to do something, and I'll talk to you about that right now. So what I was able to do was I decided I would work on the spherical moon egg that space spider comes from, and so I had to make this giant egg, and different ways you could do that, I suppose. So I told you about paper mache before. In fact, I did a segment on it in one show. It's a very simplistic type of art, but it's also a very tedious type of art. So what I did was I found a mom and pop shop that happened to have a 3-foot balloon, and I got the 3-foot balloon and got it filled up with air, and I took it home. And then what I did was, if you remember the paper mache technique, I used the right amount of water with the glue, and I cut out strips of newspaper. Yeah, and that's the tough part. Finding newspapers these days can be tough. But I have a lot from years past that I kept, especially because I knew in the future it was going to be kind of on the short side. So anyway, what I did was I very patiently, and you have to be patient when you're working with paper mache, I put it over this 3-foot balloon, and then you have to wait approximately 24 hours. That's a good rule to go by. And I got my first layer done. Now, you really don't feel like doing anything more than that, but you want it to last, and you want it to be real and have some weight to it. So then I went ahead and put a second layer on it, and I waited 24 hours, and then it was ready for, yes, a third layer. So I put 3 layers of paper mache on this egg. And then the next thing that happened was Kurt, my buddy Kurt, he was nice enough to sand the whole thing for me, because the dried paper is can be very rough. You can get little corners, and you can get edges, and you don't want it rough. At least I didn't want it rough on this particular egg. And so he smoothed the whole thing out with the sandpaper, and we dusted it all off, and now the next step, and I'm not finished the next step, but the next step will be to paint it not once, but at least twice, and hopefully that will give it the texture, the shine that I want. And since it is a giant egg space spider from the moon, I will probably try to paint some kind of interesting design on it too, to make it be unique, because it probably would be if there was such a thing. So I'm going to show you a few pictures right now. I'm going to show you the first few pictures from different angles of the first layer, and then I'm going to show you a couple of pictures from the second layer, and then I'm going to show you a couple of pictures from the third layer. And the reason I'm telling you this is because if I didn't tell you this, you may think, he's just showing us the same thing over and over again, because once paper mache dries, it all looks the same. But I just wanted to show you the work, that we did along the way. So here's a few pictures of that. All right, the next thing I had to say to you was that just for kicks, and mostly because I refound something on the move. When you have this big move, you've had things in boxes and you've had things all over the place. They haven't been separated correctly, perhaps, or whatever. But I was able to find these old rubber molds that I had never used, and they're for plaster. So I thought, you know what? Let me try this out. So I was able to get this special plaster and put the ratio of water, once again, it's water and plaster as opposed to water and glue. And I did that right. And I was able to pour these into the molds. And these were rock molds. So for the first time ever, it was a nice experience for me. And it didn't really take long. I was able to make some rocks. Now, it might not sound too exciting, but it was kind of neat. And I have a few pictures of those rocks to show you. Now these aren't large rocks, these are very small rocks, and I'll explain to you in a minute why I made them that small in particular. So here's just a couple of pictures of those rocks. So why did I do this with everything going on? I'm making the egg, and why go ahead and do this? Well, remember, I'm into fun. I know it sounds corny, but I think it's very important if you're going to continue to keep doing this, to keep pressing on, so to speak. And there's another reason, which is what I'm leading up to. Today, basically, what I have are 2 points for you about our B movie filmmaking. And the first point is really quick, it's really short, and the second point is much larger. But I think they're both very interesting points. So here we go with those. All right. Point number 1. It's very short, like I said. I call it side projects. Now, why am I even thinking about this or talking about this when I have all of this work to do on this movie, Space Spider? Well, here's the thing. If you go ahead and eat the same meal every single day, especially if it's all you're eating each day, or even if you're having the same breakfast every day, the same lunch every day, or the same dinner every day, maybe the others are different, it doesn't matter. But after a while, it's gonna get boring. Most people, you could use a change, and trust me, change does not come easy to me. So I kind of like things routine, but especially making the film, especially doing a lot of this by myself until I can use the help later. Sometimes you just need a break, but I want to keep making a movie. I want to keep experimenting, keep doing things like this. So side projects are very important while you're going ahead and spending all this time and energy on a movie that you're doing. And so I think it's just, I think it just breaks it up perfectly. It kind of lets you relax a little bit. And so that's why I made the rocks. So the rocks, now technically it could be a spot for them in this movie. I don't think there will be at this time because I think I've passed that part. But that's okay because A, I could technically use them in this movie, or B, I could definitely use them in another movie, or because it's a side project, what it will do is, like, for instance, those are, I made them small because they're supposed to be part of the miniatures that I'm building. So in the studio we have a 4-foot by 8-foot table, and I'm going to make it either the surface of the moon or maybe a surface of just some unknown planet. And I like snow in science fiction movies. Those of you who know me know that I think snow is a really interesting thing. You'll find that if you see snow in a sci-fi film, I believe most of the time it's a good movie, and the snow really made that happen. I can't explain it any more than that, but but so um, I plan on making a model from scratch and using it crash landing on this planet that has a lot of rocks and a lot of snow, and we're just going to see how that goes. So even if I never use that actual scene, what it helps me do is just learn how to do something in yet another way. That's it for that point. It was quick, but you know what? It's important. Sometimes, even when you're doing what you love, and I do love doing this stuff, it's nice to just change it up for a little bit, do something a little bit different. All right, point number 2. And this is a much bigger point, but very, very important in my opinion. It also explains a little bit about the history of B movies. Point number 2 is, I'm calling it stock footage. And I'm going to actually read directly from my notes, just a little blurb for a second, just to, because they put it so eloquently in here. It says that one of the encompassing definitions of the B movie is cost, low budget, limited cash, lack of funds, etc., etc. So there are often certain scenes in some movies that the budget just it doesn't allow for, and the scene is actually needed, though it helps move the story along. And so what does the director do when he needs that scene but he doesn't have any money? Well, stock footage is usually what's been going on since, I mean, probably even before the 50s, but I'm just going to say the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s even. And you know what? Probably even today. But particularly back then, stock footage is what was very important. And what is stock footage? For those of you who don't know, stock footage is usually footage that the person who's making the film, like me for instance right now, it would be footage that I have found. It's usually clippings of footage that I didn't make, but it's anybody can, it's public domain, and you can use it if you want to. And it may, for instance, a lot of it was used in the 50s in a lot of the sci-fi films. In a lot of these sci-fi films, there was always a lot of, let's see, what should we call it? There's always a lot of monsters, usually radioactive, and they were hard to stop, and they would always bring in the army. There's a lot of that kind of stuff, and it's good stuff. But so sometimes even the filmmakers back then, who of course they're making these B films, and they just don't have all the time and the money to shoot these big war scenes, tanks shooting, exploding things, guys running around with their guns shooting, dying, whatever it happens to be. And so what they do is they look for somebody who's done it before, and sometimes it's actually been done. That the sets were built for this, the actors acted, and this is what happened, and it's from an old film, and now it's public domain, and people could insert it into their film. Sometimes it was actual footage, and sometimes it wasn't just particularly like army and things like that, but it could be anything. But a lot of times also it was disaster. Some disaster films that you see are totally rendered, CGI, even in a practical special effect you can render those. But then other disasters were actually filmed. Volcanoes exploding, hurricanes, all kinds of storms, anything like that. So what's nice is that, again, you don't have the money for everything, but you need the scene. You don't want to cut it out because it's probably important to the movie. It could be. And if it is, then you can look for some stock footage. But they ran into some problems, and I'll tell you what some of the problems are. So years have passed. So when somebody's making something like in the 70s and they want to grab some stock footage from the 50s, the cameras were different, the lighting was different. So first of all, they need to find a clip or two of something that would sort of blend into their film, so you might even think that it's real. A lot of times that was hard, that didn't happen. I compare it to CGI. Now, I understand what CGI is. I know that's the thing. I still don't like it. In general, I still don't like it. It's okay here and there. If you do it here and there, you don't notice it. I've said this before. But if 3/4 of your movie is CGI, you might as well just, in my opinion, made and filmed an animated cartoon. Okay, but that's just me. I'm a little harsh on CGI. I'm just a big fan of practical effects. So just like you can notice bad CGI put into a new film, you notice the stock footage a lot, and it was a lot harder. There was two men I wanted to mention, and they're very well known in the field of B movies, but not just B movies. They also make feature movies with A-list actors, and they have big budgets too. But a lot of their stuff was B movies. Particularly, I'm going to bring up Roger Corman. Now, there's probably I'm guessing most of you know who Roger Corman is. He's still alive. He's an older man, and he directed many films, but he produced even so much more than he directed. And he has taught a lot of people how to make movies, a lot of famous people today. And he was known as the king, he still is, he's known as the king of B movies. And he said he never lost a dime. He said he always made a profit, no matter how little of cash he had to make an entire film. So occasionally he used the stock footage that you often see in B movies, but technically he didn't use as much as you'd think based on the amount of movies he's made, and that's because a lot of his films were sci-fi, some exploitation films. You know, you don't need a whole lot of stock footage of army guys in tanks and shooting guns and disasters happening with hurricanes, things like that, when you are making a movie that's somewhere in space, in the stars, in the universe. It's usually in the future. So, but he did use them, and the next guy used them all the time, and he used them because A, he liked them, and B, he was into saving money, and the studio liked that about him, and that helped their bottom line. In our movie, there is no bottom line. I'm not worried about money because there really is none. But the second person would be Irwin Allen. If you don't know Irwin Allen, he is not alive anymore. But Irwin, he was known as the master of disaster because he made a lot of films that you probably have seen, and they were basically disaster films. They were good movies. They had big stars and they had big budgets, but he was known for that. And in the '60s, that's when he really used a lot of them. Even though he did use them in his A pictures, he didn't use them that much, but he used them a lot in his TV shows. Before he was the master of disaster, he was just incredible in the '60s. In '60s television, he had 4 TV shows, 4 one-hour TV shows on at the exact same time. One started in like '64 and went for a few years. One started in '65. One started in '67, 66, '67, and another started also in the '60s, and they all went a few years. One went just 1 year, but these films, and these were science fiction too. They all had smatterings of science fiction. Some had smatterings, some were definitely science fiction. But depending on the story, it's all about the story. So a lot of times I'd look back into the past, especially Time Tunnel. Time Tunnel was the one that they were constantly going back in time and rediscovering things. So he used stock footage all the time. All right. So now let's get to the actual point that I want to leave you with today. Okay, so why am I really bringing all this up? Well, we as amateur filmmakers, you as an amateur filmmaker or whatever level you happen to be on, we can make stock footage. And it's something that we probably ought to do. Um, so basically, the reason that we can do it, and it shouldn't ever look bad, it shouldn't ever, unless there's extreme lighting issues, as long as you're using the same camera that you're using to make your film with, then this stock footage should blend in perfectly and look exactly as though you shot it. Now, technically we did shoot it, we just are going to shoot it before we ever get to this like current project. So let me give you an example. In 2019, we were invited down the shore. So we went down the shore for a couple days, and naturally, you want to spend time with who you went down with and who you were meeting, and you want to take the time. And we swam in the ocean, we went on the beach, we did the boardwalk, we did all that kind of thing. However, I brought my camera. Now, I was sensible. I live in the same world that you do, believe it or not. And it's not like I carried the camera around with me. I didn't. But along the way, I knew I would find time to film a few things. So when we were down the shore, what did I do? I filmed the ocean. I filmed the waves rolling in. I filmed some boats, perhaps, and I did. What else did I film? I filmed some seagulls, just some sand dunes, different things like that. And that's going to be able to be used probably sometime down the road in whatever picture I happen to do. And actually this summer, during all this commotion, we were invited up to, it's called Thousand Lakes, it's in New York, and I brought my camera. So when I had the right moment, I took some footage of the St. Lawrence River, some of the islands that are out there between New York and Canada. I took pictures of boats, mostly like in marinas and the plant life around it. And I just took a lot of pictures of a lot of things, helicopters in the sky, just, it doesn't really matter what it is, because sooner or later, and depending on if you can stay with all this and you want to stay with it and you just keep making movies, it's going to work out for you. Because, and I'll show you a couple of clips. You'll see a couple of clips, and you've seen some other clips of mine, so there's just no difference because I'm using the same camera. It's the same grade, so you're not going to lose anything. So I'll be able to incorporate that into a movie later on. Not this picture, but later on down the road. And I will just keep doing it, and that's something we can do. Still photographers all the time. The ones who are really super enthusiastic, ones who do it as a hobby, but they're really enthusiastic, they always have a camera. They usually have it slung around them, and I could do that too. But it's something I don't want to do with like a good camcorder. I just, when it's time, I'll take it out and I'll go and I'll film. But this is something that all of us can do. I hope I explained that well enough for you to get, and hopefully that will be some kind of an advantage for you. I know it will be for me. So here are just a couple of clips from each trip that I was able to get. Okay, well, that basically wraps up episode 9. There's one thing I want to leave you with. Future episodes. Again, like I said in the beginning of this one, I am going to try to put more episodes out much more frequently. Too many months have passed since the last episode, and I want to get away from that. I want to give you more content, even if it's shorter videos. So I will continue to make things, build things, and I will continue to take pictures of that as I'm doing it. And let's see, I will also do this practical special effects like I promised for our second film, Die, Snapper, Die. And I want to add another segment. And a lot of people do this online on YouTube. It's not exactly going to be what they do. A lot of people, and they're good. It's good stuff. They're movie people, and they've watched a film or they've seen a film a million times, and they talk about it and they critique it. They give you X amount of tips on how to on what they thought of it, what they liked about it, what they didn't like about it. I'm not really into the not liking about it. Here's the thing. When I go see a movie, I go see what I know I'm going to like. I don't just show up at a theater and say, well, I wonder what's playing. Oh, I don't know anything about that. That could be interesting. Let me get that. No, I don't do that. And I'll tell you why. Because there's certain films I don't care for. I'm not big into the romance kind of chick flick, if you will, if I can say that. There's just certain things that don't interest me. And if it doesn't interest me, I don't want to waste my time on it. It might be a perfectly good film. It's just not for me. So when I go see a film, I know what I'm going to see. I may even know a lot about it, how it was made, depending on the research I chose to do, or maybe I read the book. The book, a lot of times the novelizations come out before the movie. It just depends on how interested in it I am. But when I go see a film, 99 times out of 100, I already know I'm going to like the film before I even see it, because it's a film about the things I like to see. So what I'm going to do, since this is a B movie channel, really, a theme that we are, one of the things that I collect many things, but one of the things I collect are original movie posters. And I seek them out, I find them, especially for B movies. And it's a challenge and it's fun, because it's not like there were thousands and thousands of them made. It didn't work that way. Sometimes there might have been just 300 made, or even less than that. Could be more than that. So to find one in decent shape is really terrific. So I will purchase it, and then I will have it mounted and framed in glass, and I'll put it up wherever I can. Space is getting tighter, so I used to work in a museum, so you learn how to rotate things if you want to see different things. Or if you don't have space, you take one down, you put another one up, and you just keep rotating, things like that. But that's what I really like. So I thought, why not just take a little bit of time in each episode and talk about a particular B movie from the past that I enjoy. And I'm very positive, so I'm not going to tear it down. I'm going to just tell you what I really like about it, and a particular scene that I think is great, or talk about how maybe they did something. And trust me, it's not going to be CGI filled. It's going to be practical effects. That's what I like. So I thought, well, what I can do is I can show you a particular poster each episode that I have, or maybe even a Laserdisc cover or a Blu-ray or DVD, and then you'll see what I'm talking about. And I'm sure a lot of you will have seen these movies, and so I'll just kind of give you my thoughts on those, and maybe there's some that you haven't seen and you like it too, and maybe it'll help you check it out and enjoy it just as much as I do. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you for watching, and I will see you real soon. Thank you. Bye.